Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I am coming back at you with another Wargaming in Miniature video. In today's video, we're going to review my Marshals and Generals, a core Napoleonic rules set that I'm currently writing. And then, and then I'll talk about my progress in the 15mm Napoleonic project that I'm doing. I have some miniatures that I had finished. I got some miniatures that I started, and then there's another miniature that I'd like to compare with you against my 15mm Old Glories. It's actually alarming, and I'll have to talk to you about it. Now we are going to have a weekly Wargaming, or Wargaming Weekly, this Tuesday. So come and check that out. We'll discuss a little bit more. We'll probably, at that time, I probably am going to be talking a little bit about my Napoleonic rules, because each week I seem to add a little bit here and there, gradually working on it. I haven't really put a whole lot of, I've put a lot of thought process in, but I haven't put a lot of work into it. Well, actually, that might not be true depending on your definition of a lot of work. But I've really been focusing on painting miniatures and getting ready to be able to play test whatever rules I come up with. And I want to make sure I have it done by next year's NashCon. This year's NashCon is this upcoming Friday. So Friday I'll be in Nashville. And then Saturday is my game that I'm hosting, which happens to be a World War II game. And then when we come back from NashCon, probably Sunday afternoon, then I will focus a lot of my time into these rules and my Napoleonic miniatures, trying to get them ready for at least Quatre Bras. At least a Battle of Quatre Bras. A core per side, approximately, is what I'm kind of shooting for, and then I can expand from there. Okay, so let's talk about the rules. Now, if you've been following my channel, you are aware that I am writing a set of rules called Marshals and Generals, and I will be working on that all the way up till probably next year about this time. Okay, so the table of contents is growing, plus I will put subcategories in here because once I get everything on paper, then I'll go through and edit it and rearrange it and organize it and stuff like that. So this is all tentative. I might even rewrite my introductions and general concepts and stuff like that, because as I design the rules, my the content that I want to put in an introduction or a concept might change. So that's just my thought. Okay, now figure basing, it's pretty much straightforward. You know, it's 50 yards an inch, and a figure is approximately 25 men. We're not trying to lock it in, but that's just a guideline for me to build my battalions based on historical numbers. Okay, so and then we talk about mounting figures, you know, what size bases. That really hasn't really changed at all. And the cavalry, the number per figure is, I might have to go in and figure that out. See, this is saying one base is 100 men and one base is 75 men. I think that's pretty close to the way I'm going to do it. Okay, mainly because cavalry brigades or cavalry battalions, you know, I say that with air quotes, were the maneuver element that I'm putting on the table tends to have less men in it. but they occupied as much space because horses, right? All right, so we'll get into that. The turn order. There's been a lot of thought process going in on the turn order on how I want to do it. I thought I wanted to go with I go, you go. Not I go completely and you go completely, but I go with one brigade and then you go with one brigade, and it goes back and forth until all brigades are finished. But that is all right. So instead of like an I go, you go, each brigade, in turn, I've been debating on whether or not to put a counter in a bag, one for each brigade on the table, and then draw each, in turn, a counter that represents either player A or player B, and then they could activate a battalion. Now they might get a chance to activate two brigades back to back. They might get a chance to activate, no brigades, and I like that variable risk or chance of not being so linear, right? It becomes the players. It's an exciting experience because it's something that happens during bolt action games when players have a number of chits, or dice in a bag, and they draw it and they say, "Oh, it's not me, it's you," and then you hand it to your opponent, and then he activates a squad, and then you go back into the bag, you pull it out, and then you go back and forth, and it gets to a point where there's only one side left in the bag, and you know that they're going to get activated. It does two things. It keeps players on their toes. They can't plan perfectly for strategy because it should be a little bit confusing on the table, but it also gives you a chance. You'll when you draw that token and you activate a brigade, you can actually take that token and put it on the brigade, letting you know that that brigade's already been activated. And then at the end of the turn, you collect all these dice back up and you put them back in the bag. And if a battalion or a brigade gets wiped out, you take that die out of the bag, right? And you take it out off the table and you leave it, on the sidelines. I think I'm going to go with that route because I find that to be a very enjoyable mechanic. Okay, so that's turn order. Okay, commands and activations. Last week we worked on command ranges, the command and control abilities of each of the commanders. I've labeled them BC for brigade commander, DC for division commander, CC for corps commander, and AC for army commander, right? And these are the ranges I think I'm going to work with, the 4, 8, 16, and 32. Everything doubles. But those numbers are not set in stone. That's just the numbers I'm going to work with. And then they're going to be tweaked up and down based on the skill of the commanders. Okay, but commanders are going to have more than just that as their defining stat. They're going to have a inspiration value, which is going to motivate or motivational. Maybe it's motivational or inspiration, or even as most gamers come to know it as a leadership value. I think I don't want to call it leadership. I think I want to call it inspirational or motivational value, which is going to be a modifier to combat or morale or something like that. I think the default number for a commander is going to be +1, because just having a commander present in the area is going to be inspirational. But I think more inspirational generals are going to have pluses. And if the general is kind of like a dingus, he might be a +0. I don't think I'm going to go with minuses, but not unless they're just truly horrible. Okay, now there's really only 4 orders so far that I think I want to use. I want to use the move and fire, which is your standard move once, shoot once kind of deal. And then there's the quick move, which means you move twice. And then there is the stand and fire, which doesn't mean you fire twice. What it means is you fire 1.5 times in one shot. So it actually makes the single shot more effective, which means because after each shot at a battalion, they get a chance to remove 1 hit. I toyed with the idea of shooting once, removing a hit, shooting twice, removing a hit. Well, what's the core tenet of this game is fast. So instead of shooting twice, saving twice, we're going to do a shoot 1.5 times right here, 1.5 times the dice pool. So if you've got a 6 die dice pool, then you'll be rolling 9 dice. I thought about adding a round up, round down in the sentence, but that is not necessary because all battalions are an even number of bases. They're either 2, 4, 6, or 8. So you'll never have to round down. If they're in line, they fire with all their bases. And if they're in attack column, they only fire with 2. So that's an even number. Now, there are some modifiers to their dice pool, like shooting at a wall, or shooting an entrenchment, or shooting into a building, or something like that. And those are modifiers after you determine your dice pool. So you would take your 6, half again, making it 9, and then you would take the 2 off of for shooting into a building, hypothetically. So it would be 7. So you just roll 7 dice. Okay, so that's the stand and fire. The fire action is just part of the move and fire. And then there's quick move, just says you take 2 move actions as above, and here's the move actions. Now included in the move actions are changing formations, pivoting, wheeling, that kind of stuff is all part of the move action. Okay, and then charge. Yeah, so if you want to, so my rules, I've decided that if you want to charge, you're going to have to make an experience test and pass to charge. If you fail the experience test, you actually take a hit. Basically, that represents the fact that your brigade or your battalion got, some of their units went forward, some didn't. Or when they went forward, they went at 2 different targets. They didn't know, there's a little misunderstanding there. And so that's why they take a hit, but they don't actually move because they have to stop, and they realize, like, part of the battalion realizes that they're going in the wrong direction or whatever. I'll still give them a single move, I think. They just won't be able to move into contact. So they don't get their double move that a charge would normally give them. The charge is going to give them a move so they can wheel and pivot and turn just like a normal move up here. But then the charge move will be just the second half of the move, and it'll just be a straight line. Okay, so now I also thought about formations being pinned. Basically, if you get within 4 inches, uh, and you're in my threat zone. So my threat zone is a area defined by the outside edges of my battalion, just straight forward. And if you're within 4 inches of that, then you cannot change formation. Yeah. That's with infantry. With cavalry, I think their threat zone is going to be 6 inches, but I'm not sure exactly. So by pinning a formation, what that'll allow it to do, because most brigades are not a mixed brigade, they're not like a cavalry and infantry in the same brigade. I mean, that could happen in a division, but it's not even usually in a division. Usually you have a cavalry brigade and an infantry brigade. But what this allows to happen is a infantry brigade can close in on a opponent and threaten them so that they can't change formation. And then when the cavalry brigade is activated, that cavalry battalion can charge in and cause them serious problems. And alternatively, the cavalry can move up gently and threaten a infantry battalion. And when a cav closes to within 1 movement, the infantry battalion is obliged to make a test. And if it fails, it has to form square. Or I don't know how I want to do this. I might do it where if they fail, the opponent gets to choose if they form square or if they remain in the current formation. But if they, because that's basically the commander making a bad decision. And then if they pass, then the owner can make a decision on whether he wants to form square or not. Because he might feel that the infantry that's close is more of a threat than the cavalry, or he might think he's got plans to charge the cavalry with one of his own brigades, preventing it from charging, so there's no need for his unit to change. So it's going to be a die roll to determine who gets to make that decision. And if the cavalry unit gets to make the decision that might want him to form square because he's planning on advancing with his infantry to crush the square with an infantry battalion, or he might want him to stay in line or column or wherever he's at because he's planning on actually charging him with cavalry. So that's still a work in progress. Okay, movement, I think I pretty much locked that in. That hasn't really changed. And it's 4 and 8 if you're in the march, and then cav is 8, heavy cav is 6. And then artillery is based on if it's an 8-pound or less, or if it's over 8 pounds, like if it's a 9-pounder or more. So that'll determine how many. This is limbered. It's march column and limbered, and this is deployed. Now deployed doesn't mean line. It does mean line or attack. Right? I don't know. I got line and attack down here. And I changed it to deploy. I don't know. I'm going to have to maybe reword this a little bit. Okay, ranges for the weapons, and then nothing there has really changed. And this is just me giving myself a general rule of thumb. I'm not going to put that in the rules there. I'm going to move that into the unit stats themselves. But that's just there to kind of give me a general rule of thumb. And then soft cover, hard cover, all gives pluses to dice. So if you're shooting at a square, you get an extra die, and if you're artillery at point blank, you get 2 extra die. Yeah, so artillery shooting at a square and point blank would get plus 3 dice. And then you just roll, trying to get a target number. If you hit, you do casualties. Okay. Now, I typed up quite a bit on the melee. I worked a little bit of it out on camera last week. So there is a charge test that must be made. That's going to be based on their experience, which I haven't decided on that number yet. But I have a feeling that if you're an attack column, you're more likely to succeed in your test to charge. It's not a better charge. It's just you have waves of people behind you pushing you forward because they don't see the enemy like you do up front. So you're going to get a plus to the charge. Now, breakthroughs are something specific to cavalry. When you charge in, if you force that unit to either fall back or if it's destroyed, and you succeed on your fallback test, because both sides have to make this fallback test in every instance. But if you're cavalry and you pass, and they are, well, I should say, if you're cavalry and you pass and they fall back or are destroyed, you actually get another move, another charge action, I should say, where you can move and charge another unit. And then each time that you do that, your fallback number increases or decreases by 2, because it's -2 for every breakthrough attempt. It might be for the first attempt. I haven't really figured that out yet. And as you can see, charge move doesn't have any text in there yet at all. Who is engaged? Something I've decided I think I'm going to do. Yeah, it's going to be the attacking unit will shift to make sure that it lines up with the defending unit. I've decided to do the shift just for organizational purposes. But if the opponent has 2 battalions side by side and you are a larger battalion, this is when it comes into play, and you hit that first battalion and you line up with it, if you've got overlap and it touches that second battalion becomes what's called a close support. So they actually get to participate in they get to add dice to the combat, right? So not just the combat results. If a supporting unit is within 1 inch of or secondarily contacted by the opposing unit, then it is considered close support, and it is possible to have 2 close supports, because your battalions might be within 1 inch of each other, and this battalion might come in and hit you perfectly on line. But if your side battalions are within 1 inch of you, that allows for close support. So you'll have a close support on each side. Now, if you have a 3rd battalion behind your unit, it will not provide close support. First of all, it can't be within 1 inch of your there's no way it could be within 1 inch of the attacking aggressive battalion, because the minimum thickness of a battalion is 30 millimeters, which is 2 ranks or a cavalry unit. So 30 millimeters is more than 1 inch. So there's no way it could happen. And to be a support, you have to be within 3 inches of the unit engaged in melee. So you're either going to be separated by up to 3 inches and still provide support. If you're 4 inches or more away, you're not going to be in support. I know some rules say 6 inches or whatever, but that's with a 28 millimeter figure. With 15s, I brought it into only 3 inches. Okay. And then conducting the melee. So determine the number of dice. It's just like shooting. You have a dice pool. You roll against a target number based on your unit to determine how many hits you deliver. So you start with a number of bases. It doesn't matter what formation you're in. If you're in a battle line, you get 2 extra dice. Every close support gives you 2 dice. And then there's cavalry and infantry right here. Cavalry versus infantry not in a square is 2 dice. Infantry versus infantry in a square is 2 dice. And infantry square versus cav is gets a 2 dice. So if you're cavalry versus a square, you don't get a penalty, right? But your opponent in square gets a bonus. And if you're a square versus infantry, you don't get a penalty, but your opponent versus you does. I've been thinking about giving a square a minus. And then I thought about it. I was like, well, infantry versus infantry in square, do I want to give them less dice? I think I do. And the same thing with infantry not in a square versus cav. I don't think I want to give them a minus because they could technically cause a lot of casualties. They just could also sustain a lot of casualties. So infantry not in a square versus cav is not going to get a plus or a minus. But I do think that infantry in a square versus infantry should get a minus. That'd be the only minus out there, wouldn't it? Okay, and then we got fallback. If you're in an attack column, you will actually resist falling back, even if you take casualties, right? And then same thing with if you have supports to your left or right or rear, that'll also help you resist falling back. And then if you do, and then I've got the failure and successes. So if you're an infantry unit and you fail, you'll move back 8 inches. If you're a cav unit and you fail, you'll move back 12 inches. If you're an artillery battery and you fail, you're just outright destroyed. Successes. Infantry unit will remain stationary. Cav unit with success versus a successful unit will be forced to fall back, but cavalry unit versus a failing unit will do a breakthrough, right? And then there's now a breakthrough is like issuing a charge. Yeah, okay, so that's where the breakthrough modifier comes in. A breakthrough, I'm trying to remember my own rules. A breakthrough is a new charge test. Because remember, each time you charge, you have to test. And if you succeed, then you get the move and the charge. Where if you fail, you only get the move but not the charge. That's where I'm thinking I'm going with that. And you'll also receive a hit if you fail. I think a cav unit that succeeds is going to take a hit. Maybe not. Maybe I don't give them a hit. Yeah. So, but then when you have to make that new charge test to press forward, that's where the -2 comes in. And I'm thinking I thought about giving some British maybe a -4, and only the French get a -2, and maybe the Prussians get a -3, or maybe then they only get a -2 because the British cav was notoriously bad. So in following orders, that is, they were good, skilled swordsmen and horsemen, but they didn't follow orders. So that was that might be a thing. I might put British get a penalty on their cav on breakthrough tests. Okay, and then artillery that succeeds, they have a choice. They can either remain stationary or fall back. Because what if the infantry unit that charges the artillery passes? He's going to remain stationary. And your artillery and you pass. Do you want to remain stationary and stay in a melee with the infantry? You might. Or you might want to just fall back limbered. Just evade. And that's where I'm at working on that. Now a scrum, I'm calling a scrum if both units succeed and both units remain stationary. Then the next time either one of those brigades are activated, then those battalions will redo their melee. But they don't get any attacker defender modifiers. So they wouldn't get these modifiers. They would just get the number of aces, and that is it. So you would get no defending an obstacle, and you would get no cavalry. No, I think I should still give them cavalry versus a square, even if it is a scrum. No, wait, hold on, back up. Cavalry cannot remain. Never mind, that doesn't apply, because cavalry, even if successful versus a successful unit, they are forced to fall back. They can't remain stationary. So really that'll only apply if infantry or artillery are involved. Yeah, so they wouldn't get any of these modifiers anyway. And the close supports and the battle line, I think I'm gonna lose the close supports and the battle line. No, they shouldn't. I'll have to put which ones they'll actually lose. I'll work on that. Okay, so then a breakthrough is when they go through. Okay, end-turn activities. Haven't really decided what that will be, but it's going to be possibly picking up dice, right? Picking up dice, determining if somebody's won, cleanup, of figures. Now, I thought about as an end-turn activity, it's also going to be maneuvering your generals, positioning them for the new turn, because you want to put them in a position where they'll be able to give orders. And I think generals can be moved at this time, the end turn activities. They can be repositioned to provide the most coverage or command and control. Plus, I'll pick up the dice. Plus, I was thinking I would give generals an opportunity to rally. And when I say general, I mean the player. Give them an opportunity to rally off a number of hits. So they might roll a die, and then that's how many hits off of their units that they can pull, kind of as a restructuring, reordering kind of thing. I'm thinking that a little bit of rallies. And then the morale doesn't really talk about the rallies. What it's talking about is getting killed and then taking cards for destroyed units and seeing if you defeat the army morale, right? So I probably could call that army morale. Okay, now the unit rosters, I haven't really started working on the unit rosters. Because I need to know what I need on the unit rosters before I start putting anything on the unit rosters. Part of it is I'm going to put the unit name, obviously, like British Line, and then I'm going to put musket or rifle. Like if it's 95th Rifles, I'll put rifle range, and I'll put on the roster the range. So it'll be 9 inches. And I will give them a to hit number, like 4 or better, or 7 or better, or whatever it is. So you don't have to go through the book and say, what is a rifle's range? Because it'll be right there on the unit roster. And then melee weapon, it'll be like bayonet, saber, lance, broadsword, whatever it is, right? And then I'll put a 2-hit number, like maybe 7 or better. And that's what the unit would have to roll when it's doing melee to get hits. And then the quality test, units will have a quality value, and that's when you need to make any type of morale, experience, quality test, all goes against that number. So it's the more brave, more, and that's really what I'm looking at, is bravery and just ability to follow orders, and their training and stuff like that goes into the quality test. And then there's a battalion morale value, which doesn't have anything to do with the battalion. It has everything to do with the army morale value. So you add up all the battalion morale values for all the different battalions in your army, and that gives you an army morale value. And when that army morale value is reached, the game is over. And most units will have a battalion morale value of 2. Some weak units like Landwehr or something like that might have a battalion morale value of 1. So you can get more Landwehr units destroyed. And wait. Am I going backwards? Because you're trying to determine, I don't want to give them 0 because, I don't want to give them low numbers. I might reverse it and make it a high number, because when you draw that card, that gives you a number between like 0 and 3 against your army morale value. And if I'm drawing one card for a Landwehr unit, and I'm also drawing one card for a Grenadier unit, the Grenadier unit should be a bigger hit against your army morale, where the Landwehr should be less of a hit. So actually, I might reverse the numbers and make the Landwehr give you more army morale, because drawing their card won't have an effect on your army morale as bad, because that Landwehr unit gave you a bigger army morale. And the Grenadier unit, when he dies, he only added 1 to your army morale, because when you destroy him, that's a huge hit against your army morale. I think I'm going to do it that way. I think I'm going to do it reverse. And then if there's any units that have special rules. Okay, so that's marshals and generals. That's where I'm at so far. All right, guys, so this is where my units are at right now. Ignore all this green. That is just me doing math, trying to figure out if I'm going to have enough figures to do everything. And it looks like I'm going to have enough figures to do all these battalions. I already have the figures, so that's not going to be a problem. But if you see these blue boxes filled in, those are units that I've completed. I did finish the 1st and the 6th Chassuers. Also, all the generals, as you can see, are input. Now, I think I've showed off all my generals. I did a video called Generals on Parade or something like that, where you can look at all the generals one at a time. But I'm going to show you here in just a minute the Chassuers. I've got them right here on my turntable. I'm going to put the camera on those here in just a minute, show that off. I've got the Brunswick Hussars here, and remember, these 2 generals I'm proxying, so I don't have enough Brunswick generals for that. But I'm going to talk to you about that here in just a second. Also, all the other generals are done. I do have 2 British guys that I can plug in and use as a proxy. That's why I went ahead and colored that in purple. But I got this brigade finished minus the division artillery, but I got Halkett's brigade is complete. Godecki needs the 28th orange and the artillery. And then up here, I've got a couple of these other battalions finished. Got the Limbers finished. Looking over at the French, I got the light regiment, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And I have these 1st battalions. So we're making progress. I'm currently over here. I'll show you those here in just a second. I've got the 5th and the 6th Lancers primed. And so I'm going to show you those. So then I will have all of, well, minus the horse artillery, I'll have Pyre's division finished. All right, so let's go to the turntable. All right, this is one of my Chasseurs battalions. This would be the 6th Chassuers, and these are Old Glory 15s, and you can see that there is your officer and standard, right, which, and then you got your musician. I got these kind of reversed how I wanted to deploy them. Okay, there we go. So we got your officer, you got the musician, you have your elite company here, and then you got your blue, orange, and purple companies. And yeah, and now I added a little bit of stonework to the bases. I think it brings a little bit of a different texture to the cavalry bases. You can see scattered throughout the cavalry bases there are a number of stones. I like the way my cavalry horses came out with the color scheme that I was using. It's kind of a raw sienna, and I blended it. I gradually built it up from the dark brown. I think these guys look really good. These guys have the yellow collars and turnbacks, and I think they look really good. All right, let me show you the 1st battalion. All right, guys, this is the 1st regiment, set up kind of the same way with the standard bearer, the officer, the musician, and then the elite company right there. And these horses I did slightly different. I didn't use the raw sienna like these guys, right? You can see there is a different horse color. I used what's called rusted pipe on these guys. And that's now of course I used a burnt umber base, and then I gradually built up the rusted pipe from the base, and I think it looks like a good horse color to myself. Now I was thinking that I was going to mix the horse colors around between the different, have each a randomized like horse color, but I thought it would make the unit look more cohesive if they all had the same color horse. You'll also notice that I did a few socks on these guys, on various legs on some of these horses have a blended light gray sock. It's almost like a off-white. Yeah, this is the light gray. And this is the rusted pipe. And that was gradually built up. Of course, the musician has his own light gray horse. I considered making my officers with like a dark gray / black style horse, but I decided against it. Now these guys have the red collars and cuffs and turnbacks, and then you got your elite company there, and of course you're looking at the purple, the orange, and the blue companies. And I noticed that the 1st Regiment, their musician wore a blue jacket as opposed to the rest of the regiment wearing green. And you'll also notice that the grass on these guys don't have any stones, and it's also a darker color. Okay, let me get them up to do like a contrast. Okay, now this is with both cavalry units side by side. You can see that this is a darker grass color compared to this. I really like this grass color. I've always liked it. This is the Spring Meadow from Knock. I really like it. This one is from Woodland. It's not Woodland Scenics. It's WSS. It says it's a 2mm flock, but when I went to apply it, it felt like it was a lot thicker or a lot longer than 2mm. But now looking at it in comparison to the 2mm Knock, it looks the same length, and it's got good coverage. It's just darker. If I threw some rocks in there, that might have brought it out. But what that'll do for Pyre's division, it will make it easier to understand like which battalion it belongs in without having to actually look at the epaulets, or not the epaulets, but the collars and cuffs. Even though I did write it on the bottom, like 1st or whatever, I didn't. I wanted it to be a variety of grass colors to help differentiate the units. All right, now this is one of my regiments I'm working on right now. These are Lancers. I know it's kind of hard to see with the white primer and the bright light, but I do want to point out that these were the Lancers from the bag number 2. I did a review on the Lancer bag. It comes with 16 figures. I'm only using 12 for my battalion. These guys all have raised lances. And then the 2nd battalion is, they've got their lowered lances. And these guys come with arms that are separate. It is a little bit finicky where the holes are on their torsos and how the arms match up with the torsos. And what I've also done is I've gone in and used some of that Vallejo putty filler and to not only disguise any gaps between the arm and the torso, but also to add a little bit of strength to those. And I've decided to go ahead and do all of them with the lowered lances and all of these with the raised lances, so that it'll basically define which battalion is which. The primer is still drying. I can feel it's still a little sticky in my hand before I can actually get started on painting these guys. I gotta let that dry maybe a couple more hours. I might put them out in the sun so that they can dry better. Okay, so I've got a special treat for you. This is still part of my Napoleonic project update. I know this video has gone on a little while, but there's something I want, something that happened. I ordered some figures for a commission, right? I ordered some Hungarians for a customer of mine. And when I got these Hungarians in, Warlord had provided me with a free model. Actually, I used I used, actually they didn't provide me with a pre-model. I used my, what do they call them? Coins on their website. They were getting ready to expire, so I needed to use them. So what I did was I picked up the Epic Battle Waterloo Ewarts. Look at the glare. It really messes with the white on white. Okay. Ewarts Eagle. It's a promo figure. And it didn't come with, it didn't come with a base, right? There's no base or anything, which that's fine because I'm not using the Epic Waterloo bases. But it came with, okay, I need to adjust something here. All right, so this is Ewart's Eagle, right? You got this guy laying, kneeling down, a French guy, and this guy's stealing the eagle from him. It looks like a good model. I'm okay with this model. I know it's a solid piece and it's diorama style and everything. But when I got it, I felt like this was not epic scale, right? I was told that the epic scale was 13.5 millimeters. And then when I got this figure in, I said, you know what? I wonder exactly how big this figure actually is. So I grabbed one of my cavalry figures that I had on my table, and I wanted to compare them side by side. Okay, so side by side comparison, right? Ewart's Eagle, Old Glory Chassuer. Okay, hold on. Let's try to line this up so you can see. Do you see much of a difference? Okay, I'm trying to. Ewart's Eagle, 15 millimeter Chassuer. They're almost exactly the same size. I'm looking at the horses and I'm looking at the rider. Yeah, almost exactly the same size. Okay, let's flip it around. Okay, there might be a little bit of difference, but not a full 1.5 millimeters. Okay, so measuring from the top of the miniature base, not the bottom of the base, because some miniatures have thicker or thinner miniature bases. So measuring from the top of the miniature base to the eye level of this horse is 20 millimeters, right? And then looking at this horse, just as a general rule of thumb, from the top of his base to his eye level is also 20 millimeters. Now, the rider makes him look a lot bigger than this one. So there is a slight difference here, right? So, whoops. So I'm going to compare a couple of different molds. Yeah, see, this rider looks a little shorter. Like to the eye level of the rider itself, it's 25 millimeters. Where the eye level of this rider looks like maybe 23 millimeters. So yeah, so he is a little bit smaller. Okay, but having seen that, how close they actually are, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to test. I think I might get a box of Epic Cavalry, and only because the Epic Cavalry come individually mounted, right? They're individual figures, as opposed to their infantry, which are in strips of 10, which I can't use in my rule set. But individual cavalry I could, and if I had a cavalry unit here and an epic cavalry unit there, I think there wouldn't be enough of a discrepancy, not enough of a discrepancy to make a difference. And I think I'm going to test this out because the Prussians have a bunch of cav that I don't currently own any Prussians, so I might order a Prussian cav unit, or I might order the Guard cav bundle because I don't have much Guard cav Old Glory. So you get like 20 models in a box, which I don't need 20, but some regiments I could go 12 and then 8, or I could make a 12 regiment for myself and then sell a regiment of 8 or something. I don't know. So because the Guard cav are all in single battalions, there's no like, well, that's not true. Some of them have 2 battalions. Yeah, so you might see me ordering a couple of epic cavalry units. Oh, also, there's a pack of commanders that I might get, and that'll come with like Napoleon and Wellington and some others that, well, I already have Wellington, but I don't have a Napoleon, and I don't have like a Brunswick. I need 2 Brunswick generals to flesh out, and I think a general this scale would work perfect with my army, I think. All right, guys, well, that's where we're at, and thank you for coming out and checking out this episode of our Napoleonic project updates, and I look forward to seeing you at NashCon. If you're planning on going, be sure to come out and say hi. All right, I'll catch you in the next one.